Hello, hello, everybody.
Aloha, guys. Welcome back to our channel. I am B. Yuri.
I am Chris Rabello.
We are the Divine Quantum, and today we have a very special guest.
Today, Dr. Tolly is a licensed clinical psychologist and has created a program to help those with ADHD called Power Year. He is specialized in treating ADHD, depression, and anxiety.
But today, our focus is going to be mainly talking about ADHD because these are very extensive topics. So if you know anyone that might be suffering from ADHD, or if they think they might have it, don't forget to share this video, subscribe to our channel, thumbs up, and comment if you have any questions. What are your biggest insights from today's podcast? Let's dive in. All right, guys, so we are here with Dr. Tolly, and today we're going to talk about ADHD.
Yes, I love this topic. Love it because I think I have ADHD.
Why do you,
I told you, right?
yeah, why do you think that?
I don't know because I have a daughter. My daughter, she's have ADHD.
Okay, so
Okay, what is ADHD, guys?
oh, nice.
I don't know.
Yeah. So maybe back up a little bit. So ADHD, there's three types. There's the inattentive type, which is a difficult time with details, concentration, following through on a task. And then there's the hyperactive type, which is a really different, like you have a motor and you just can't stop moving in kind of all different directions. And then there's the combined type, where it's the difficulty with the concentration, but you also have that impulsivity. So difficulties with decision making, and either type out of all three, they all have really kind of long-term effects, where in the 80s, it was kind of romanticized a little bit, where if someone had ADHD, they were presented as, your kid's really unique and they're the life of the party. And maybe in tribal times, this is a genetic a benefit, where they'd be the ones that would explore out of the jungle, look for new kind of sources of food. But unfortunately, in our era, it's not quite that romantic. It's a much higher chance of just having difficulties with friendships and not making as many friends, lower socioeconomic, the ability to climb that ladder, higher rates of jail, higher divorce rates. So when it gets to the more extreme end of things, where a lot of us have trouble concentrating and detail orientation, but when it gets to the more severe side, it's really not. We don't really live in a culture that makes it easy for people with ADHD, because we're on the clock, and it's just not easy to have in today's day of age.
How do people know for sure that they have it? How is it diagnosed?
Well, a lot of people will self-diagnose, which is part of the problem. So I shouldn't say part of the problem, but everyone can have trouble with impulsivity occasionally, right? Difficulties with concentration, but typically you want to get an assessment from a psychologist, where they're not only looking at what you're telling them, which is, hey, this is where I'm struggling. I can't make it to work on time. I can't keep a job and all these things, but they can actually give you tests where they compare you to other people your age and gender. So they can say, oh, here's where you are and here's where other people are. And that's much more objective than just kind of this, someone's subjective experience. But that's probably the best way to find out. But there's online quizzes. I have one on my website at Power Year, and I even have a disclaimer where it's like, this is not a formal diagnosis. This is just, to get you pushed in the right direction, but it's just kind of how it is out there.
What is the Power of Year?
Your program.
Your program. Maybe-
So power year, I kept thinking, so as you probably know, ADHD, depression, and anxiety, and working with couples, those are kind of my specialties where I think I'm the most effective. But ADHD is really where I've spent the most time. I wrote my dissertation on it, and I just, I work really well with people with ADHD, and power year. So here's the thing. If you're a psychologist, Nancy McWilliams, who's probably the most famous living psychologist, she said, really effective therapy, it's not a spectator sport. It's not, oh my God, you're amazing. I never thought about that before. I'm going to change my life forever. Really solid therapy with kids and adult, you're oftentimes reinforcing the same message over and over again. It's not very exciting in terms of if you were to watch a therapy session, you'd be, it's a lot of reinforcing foundational ideas over and over again. So the thing is, because there's so many ways ADHD can show up in someone's life, it's one time a week or one time every 2 weeks is not quite enough. So I came up with this idea a few years ago of what can I really do to help people, the most with ADHD. And I was thinking a supplement for therapy. So I created this year-long program with actually one of my childhood friends. He's a cinematographer. I called him up and I said, I don't know about cameras. I don't know about audio. And I don't even know much about websites. So I pitched him this idea, and he really got a bunch of people together all over the world to kind of put it to create this thing. So it's a year-long program where you log into a website. Yeah, and I can send you both complimentary editions as well, so you can try it out. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not just saying that because I came up with it, but I think I don't think there's anything really like it. So you log in, you watch a weekly video of like, hey, we're going to talk this week about keeping your space clean. Here's why you want to do it. Here's the research behind how it affects your brain and your mood. Here's foods you can eat that are going to help. Here's an exercise program. But it's 52 weeks of that, where every week we focus on one thing. This week we're going to talk about medications, if that's something that you want to explore at some point. And then you go to your kind of command center where it has your what we call a power list, but it's a to-do list basically. And we teach you how to prioritize it. We figure out what kind of mood you're in. So you do a assessment each day. So I'm feeling, today I'm feeling really sad. I have low motivation. And then our algorithm says, okay, with your mood right now, you could probably work for just 10 minutes. So do the first thing on your list for 10 minutes and then do whatever you want. And then the idea is that over time, you'll be able to do like lots of work, but it's a really slow process. But I think it's the best thing there is out there, honestly, because most programs are pretty much like, do your to-do list, just get through it. And if it was that easy, everybody would do it, right?
Yeah.
It's just like we'd all be ahead of the curve. But
That
unfortunately,
sounds amazing. Yeah, that sounds very,
thanks.
very interesting.
But doctor, what's the age the kids start the first signal have ADHD?
Well, it can happen pretty early. Because if you were to walk in any kindergarten classroom, all the kids are impulsive, right? They're all running all over the place. But typically, through testing, we'll kind of find out how so there's a couple ways. So it could show up with problems with friends, like they might be hitting their friends, because part of our frontal lobe functioning is to modulate our behaviors. So it's kind of like pulling the reins on a horse. So if you can't do that, you may be more violent. You may, talk and shout much louder than other kids. But I'm very cautious on diagnosing kids too early, because as you two probably know, it's really it can be overly diagnosed. So sometimes it's really just they're growing, sometimes they have stuff going on in their families that's affecting their own behaviors, right? So if parents are moving or in the middle of a divorce or something like that, the kids who may not have ADHD have ADHD symptoms of impulsivity or even some hyper emotionality, which we don't consider anymore, but in earlier versions of our understanding of ADHD, we included that as well, emotional regulation issues. But we still kind of see it today, but it's not, it's not necessarily a symptom that we consider.
Mm-hmm. So is there like is ADHD something you can develop in life, or is it something you're born with it? Is it genetically? How does that work?
Yeah, there is a heritable component, but for the most part, it's there's not quite a clear answer. But for the most part, someone could have a predisposition for it, and what that could mean is your frontal lobe may not be getting enough blood flow, and that could show up as inattentive ADHD. But the family could be doing enough things at home, like doing puzzles and things like that instead of TV, or really enforcing reading, or helping with the emotional stuff where the symptoms might not be as prevalent, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of both. It's nature and nurture.
Mm-hmm. So is it something that for example, if someone that is diagnosed with ADHD and for example they do your program, is this something that they can get rid of, or is it something that will forever be in their lives and they have to deal with?
Forever, yeah. That's a good question. So you can get the symptoms to a really manageable level, but some of the impulsivity, the most extreme symptoms will usually go away by the time a man is in his late 20s, and for a woman, the mid 20s. So the most intense impulsive symptoms and the most intense kind of inattentive symptoms will diminish mostly by then, but you could still have some symptoms throughout life. It might always be tough to manage time or follow through on tasks. So
And
could be a little bit of both.
you said about medication. Is there any medication that people are prescribed that can help, or?
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. So there's some research that shows, and this is, it's a really tough call because, most parents don't want to medicate their kids. And especially in today's era where we're really mindful of all the chemicals in the world right now, more than ever, right? So we don't want one more extra thing.
Yeah.
But there's some good research that shows that if a kid has really impulsive or strong ADHD symptoms, you can improve their overall brain metabolism for life if they're medicated early. So they may not need as much when they're older. Because the idea is, how I explain it to parents is that it's always an individual choice. It doesn't make any difference to me ultimately. It's, whatever helps their family. But there's risks of taking medication, right? So there's like Ritalin, Concerta, Adderall, which kind of affect appetite. It can dehydrate kids as well, so they've got to take them. You got to organize your day a little bit around that. But there's sometimes if the symptoms are extreme enough, there's consequences to not taking it as well. Like the kids may have a really hard time in school. And interestingly enough, sometimes with some kids and even adults, if they're medicated where their frontal lobe is getting enough metabolism, their handwriting improves almost instantly. There's almost an instant effect where they're noticing they're much better able to concentrate. But like I said, if it has to be the right dosage, and it has to be monitored kind of closely, because I work with a lot of adults where they'll start off like, they can concentrate really easily. They're doing wonderfully. Then they start getting irritable because they're dehydrated and they're not eating enough. And then they stop taking them. And a lot of parents are worried about addiction, right? What if my kids get addicted to this? Because interestingly enough, the brain, the part of our brains that process and metabolize a stimulant, is called the basal ganglia. Interestingly enough, it's the same part of the brain that processes cocaine. So parents' first concern is, oh my God, what if my kid's addicted to this? But in my experience, because the half-life on a stimulant is so long, it's very rare that someone can get addicted to it. And also, most kids, after their appetite's affected, they don't even want to take it. It's hard to even get a kid or an adult to take it for very long. So it's very unlikely. Whereas a harder drug, the half-life is very short. So you need to do it more often to achieve that same, effect. But with
The medication starts the low dose to high dose, right? You need
yeah,
yes.
ideally, yes. In a perfect world, that's what would happen. But what typically happens is, they'll sometimes they're given a much higher dose, to get an effect, and then the kid or adult won't take it for very long because yes, they can concentrate, but they're feeling nauseous or dehydrated or they have no appetite. So it's if you do it the perfect way and the right way, you're meeting up with your psychiatrist fairly often. You're talking about side effects, but most people, unfortunately don't have time for that because we live in a very busy society where, it's just like, give me what I need and let me get on with my day. But it's much better if it's carefully monitored. But yes, in an ideal world, low dose, figure it out, try different things out, and get that the perfect therapeutic effect. But that's not very often.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned also on your program about like certain foods that we can. Is there certain foods that people can, the diet can make an effect on the?
It does. Yeah, so Dr. Amen, he runs the Amen clinics in California where they do what's called SPECT scanning, which is they basically, by putting in a radioactive isotope in an IV, they monitor your blood, your metabolism in your brain, so they can see which parts are overactive, which parts are underactive. And he's discovered a lot of interesting findings where for most types of ADHD, higher protein diets are really helpful. Fish oil, like omega-3 supplements are really helpful. But most importantly, exercise. If you can get someone with ADHD exercising, 40 to 50 minutes a day, 6 days a week. I know it's a lot, but that's kind of what the research shows. Yeah, or I mean, even just starting someone up is good. Taking a good omega-3 supplement and eating higher, being more mindful of what they're eating, that can have a really good effect on people too. But that's a lot of work, but it's, that's probably most effective.
The people that, the kids and transition for child, for teenage, because the hormones affect,
Yep.
right? Because
Yeah.
I see my kids,
Yeah.
child for teenage, oh my God, that's crazy, and the vitamin D is very important too.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. And I'm not familiar with the research on that, but yeah, vitamin D is really helpful in most things, or just getting sunlight. The idea is that the cholesterol on our skin, when the sun hits it, it turns, somehow metabolizes into vitamin D. So yeah, sunlight, supplements, I think those are all great things to be mindful of. But with kids though, so for girls, they're going to have that really high spike of estrogen. So that's going to make them really kind of crave closeness and, interestingly, maybe not be as interested in school, right? Because they're focused on their friendships. It's really important. And boys, on the other hand, they're producing way more testosterone than they ever will in their lives. So that makes them more irritable, more competitive, more wanting to isolate. So yeah, in fact, they've even found that if girls don't say, I want to say it's between 12 and 20,000 words per day, if they don't talk a lot, they get anxious. And boys, on the other hand, are like 6,000 or 7,000. They don't need to say a lot in the teenage years, but yeah, girls need to talk a lot to just.
I agree.
To get it off.
Yeah, relief. Yeah, relief.
Is ADHD linked with like depression and anxiety? Is it all three kind of linked?
You know, it's funny, as I wrote that email kind of for the little bio, yeah, they're really found often. And it makes sense, right? Because if someone has ADHD, they're having a hard time keeping their jobs, right? So they're having a hard time in the jobs that they have, you know, completing their tasks and, you know, keeping their places and homes organized. The idea is that they're going to have so many rejecting experiences from society that after a while it will lead to some symptoms, or I shouldn't say will lead, but it may lead to some symptoms of depression and anxiety, and that's not that unusual with that experience. So they don't quite go hand in hand, but it's not uncommon for someone with ADHD to feel depression at times in their lives, or anxious, right? Because anxiety is fear about the future. And if you feel like you really can't meet your future competently, that's going to get people anxious. And that's why it's so important for ADHD to create a routine. That's where my program really is like, you've got to exercise today. You know, you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to shower. You've got to brush your teeth. And because when people are depressed, all that stuff is tedious. You know, you don't even want to brush your teeth when you're really depressed, or get out of bed. But the thing is, if you don't do those basic things, it's a vicious cycle. You won't want to get out of bed tomorrow either. So they can go hand in hand.
That makes a lot of sense. And do you have any like tips for like parents, for example, like you know, on
To help
to help
the parents.
the parents with that?
Because a lot of parents don't like talk about, your kids have ADHD, you know, because I tell for experience, when my kids 5 years old in kindergarten, the kindergarten teacher come to me and say, I think she's have ADHD. They'll say, you're a doctor? No, right?
Sure, yeah.
And when she's going to first grade, they say, yeah, I think she's need to go to a psychologist and therapist, you know. But I know a lot of kids, I think, have ADHD, but the parents refuse to help the kids. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, part of it is it's not when you hear news like that, you know, or information like that from someone that's not kind of a mental health professional, it's normal to be a little apprehensive, you know, to kind of wonder, well, you know, how can you be certain? But sure, yeah, I think no one really wants to think of their kids as having any sort of concerns, but you know, I think, you know, I'm a big believer that reality is your friend. You know, if one person tells you something, sure, I think it's okay to be somewhat hesitant, but if you're hearing it from a lot of people, then yeah, I think the more open-minded, the better. But in terms of tips for helping, anything around organization is going to be good. So helping, in your case, like helping your daughter get organized on a daily basis, and always talking about what's next, like, I mean, not always talking about it. We don't want kids to obsess over tomorrow, but to think, hey, do you have anything going on tomorrow? Tomorrow's the field trip. Do you think is there anything maybe we should pack up? Do you think we want to get anything prepared early? But routines are great for kids with ADHD, very strict routines, but also having fun too, where it's not just your lives don't revolve around ADHD, but can be really fun. But routines probably help kids the most with it, because that's how they build their confidence, where it's, at first, Mom, I don't want to do homework. You've never made me do homework before. Now I have to. But after a couple of weeks, it's like, oh, she's going with the flow. It's good. Because kids will resist any kind of change. I mean, adults too, honestly. But, most people kind of resist change at first. But once they realize that they can get better at something, you can almost become addicted to it. Like, oh my God, I really want to do my homework quick. And I hear that a lot too, where people will, they'll start exercising for the first time, and then, oh my God, I feel so much better. Why didn't I do this earlier? And it can be the same thing with kids as well, with a good routine.
Yeah, my kids right now, she's 16. She's doing everything by herself now.
Wow, good. That's awesome.
That routine, every day, the same time. She's taking a shower the same time every single day. Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing it.
in the homework in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's exactly what you got to do. Yeah, in terms of helping, because some kids can figure it out, or even in adulthood. But yeah, if you have a parent that's really, stressing the importance of a routine, it's really good. And interestingly enough, there's some research that came out last year that said, and the word that they actually used was nagging, where for whatever reason, moms that kind of nag more have more successful and resilient daughters, interestingly enough. So yeah, it's not I don't think they did the research for boys, but yeah, moms that are on the more kind of, all right, you got to get this going, they have more resilient, they raise more resilient kids. So you're on the right track.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Girls,
Yeah, there it
woman,
is.
woman.
Yeah.
Dr. Tolly, you know how nowadays everyone's like so addicted to like screens and computer phones? Can that have an effect on how the kids' brain function and lead to ADHD, or not linked at all? I don't know. It just came to my mind.
No, that's a great question. I wouldn't quite say lead to it, but definitely would not help it. So when you have that instant dopamine rush of, oh my God, this, I got this like, or this message just came in. Unfortunately, that type of immediate gratification isn't normally how the real world works. Normally, we have to work at something for a long time. I mean, even for you to be doing interviews, right? You've had to do a lot of these. You need a lot of equipment and organization to set up. It's not overnight. You need to kind of do a lot of planning for this kind of thing. So but when you have the phone that has that instant gratification, it sometimes messes with our dopamine levels, where we want that instant gratification and we don't want to wait for that thing. And Amazon Prime and Instacart, that doesn't help anybody. So yeah, yeah. And I'm a little guilty of that too, where there are apps where you can just turn it off, but um it's a fine line. So what I talk a lot about with people is, I ask them what their relationship is with leisure, because some people need a lot of leisure in their lives. Some people don't need very much at all. Some people need none, which is a concern too, where some people just want to work round the clock, and that's not always a great thing either. It's taking a break. So I'm a little kind of new school at this, where if a kid or adult, if they get all of their responsibilities done, their major ones of the day, I'm not too picky about how much time they spend on their screen. But if they're spending all their time on their screen and they're neglecting their basic kind of goals and responsibilities, then it's problematic. So there's no one answer, I don't think, on this.
Okay.
But the people who have ADHD is very smart people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, so people with ADHD, because sometimes they need higher levels of stimulation, they can make great, ER doctors and paramedics and even attorneys, where, they can find the perfect balance of preparation and impulsivity. They can be charismatic. So yeah, it's a really great combination if you can make it work for you. If not, it's really painful, and it can be a lifelong struggle. That's where the concern is. If you can figure it out, you can unlock a lot of your potentials. If not, it's you may feel chained to a pretty frustrating existence at times.
So if people wants to sign up for your program, Power Year, how can they have access to that? Do they need to consult with you first? Can they do it online?
No, they can go right online. Yeah, it's at Power-Year. Someone already took Power Year, unfortunately, and every variation of it. But yeah, if they go to poweryear.com, they can review the information and sign up right from there and start immediately, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you put the link on the.
I'll add the link, so they can do the test. They can do because it said there is a
Yep.
test that you can do, and then you can.
Yep, we've got a quiz on there and informational videos, and it kind of explains how it works, and then you jump right in. And then I'll send both of you kind of logins as well, so you can play around with it and
That sounds
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, get on board.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Thank
Do you have
you.
any
Yeah,
other
no, thanks for having me. This was fun.
questions? Yes.
Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Take
Yeah,
care.
thank